Go to my desk. Yeah. Hey, good morning. Welcome to New England. Welcome to Wesson Firearms. It's good to see you. It's good to see you. I hope you have a good visit down through the plant.
I don't mind you.
Oh, that's a good deal.
I don't mind you so much as I mind the sound because I'm talking legal opinions here.
All right, we need a little pre-roll time. Need about a few seconds. There it is. All right, here we go. Edit. 3, 2, 1. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are in Palmer, Massachusetts. Wait a minute, wait. Palmer? Palmer. I've got so many, take 2. Edit. 3, 2, 1. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are in Palmer, Massachusetts, and here I am with none other than Kelly Wesson, and we are at the Wesson Firearms plant here. And as you well know, we've been supporters of the Wesson Company for some time now because they have always fielded a very fine product, and especially today, we think that your level of fit and finish and machining and certainly quality of product is right up there with the absolute best that's available anywhere. So, Kelly, now which generation are you for?
Oh, geez. I've got to be the 13th generation Wesson in Massachusetts.
Well, now, friends, these people know something about making firearms. I mean, that's been a long time. Of course, Kelly's family dates all the way back to Daniel Baird Wesson, and there's another company over in Springfield. Don't they make guns over there?
Yes, they do.
But this is such a unique area. We're up here this weekend for the Gold meeting, and we're going to be meeting and talking to certainly some of our shooting show viewers and some of our gun club members, and we appreciate so much them taking the time to let us go through the factory. I think that a lot of you are really going to enjoy seeing how the Wesson guns are made. And certainly they have some CAD/CAM machines, but they've also got real people back there and doing some real fitting, and I think you can really see their level of expertise in the finished product. There you go. And we're out. Good. You just press the red button again.
Did I press it again?
You press it again, and we're still rolling. That's all right. Just press it again. It'll quit. That's right. That's
press
record.
It again, Johnny?
I'll move this out of the way.
Our international sales manager, who speaks fluently many different languages. Say something for us in Espanol.
¿Cómo está usted?
Muy bien. I understand that much of it anyhow. How about Portuguese?
¿Cómo está o senhor? Almost the same, but not
Almost
really.
the same. Italian?
¿Cómo está?
That's almost the same. How about French?
¿Cómo allez-vous? Now that's totally different.
Well, the French have a habit of being different.
Yeah, they certainly are.
Here we are, we're over here at the polishing department at Wesson Firearms, and we were talking about earlier the handwork that goes into these guns, and this is an example of it. These guys are handwork in the frames to get the perfect finish so that when they get blued in the bluing tanks, they get that deep blue shine to them. There's a lot of handwork that goes into these. They do it step by step, and if it's not right, they stick with it until they get the finish that they want. We have the same handwork that goes into the shrouds as the frames. The polish on the frames and the shrouds are so important because if you don't get the frame or the shroud as shiny as you can, all those little marks are going to show up in the bluing. In order to get that deep blue shine that we're looking for, this is one of the most important parts in the shop. Over here, after the guns are polished and they get that bright finish, they have to clean off all of the buffing compounds before they go into the bluing tank. So that's what he's doing here. He's making sure that they're all clean and that they're ready to take the blue and go into the blue tank. The inspection here is very critical.
How long will you keep the frame in, say that solution here? How long will that? 35, 40 minutes. And how long will it take the blue one?
Yeah, the bluing takes 35 to 40 minutes.
Paper towel or something.
Okay, Joe, what we have here?
Here we got a couple frames that just come out of the bluing tank, and here they'll get washed off and oiled, and then they'll be inspected to make sure there's no blemishes or anything, and then they get sent up to the assembly room where they'll be put together and then shipped out. Okay, over here we have our Roby saws. These are cut-off saws. The one on the far end is our cylinder stock. That's what it starts out as, one long bar, and it gets cut to a rough size, and then they move on later in the processes with the lathes and the drills and all. And here we have the cut-off saw cutting bolts for the guns. We got cylinder blanks here. Over here we have our gun drills. Over here they drill the hole out of the center of the barrel stock, and they also do the shrouds also. Drill the hole out. Over here we have our broach. We got Hank here. He's pulling the broach through the barrels in the bath of oil. The oils works real well. You get a real good finish with the broach pull. It's an art. A lot of this stuff here is an art, and this is one of those machines that, you know, as old as it is, it still works real well. Okay, we get the bar stock in. It's all solid bars of stock. And this is crane stock right here. It goes from here over to the Roby saws where they cut it off. But this is how the gun starts. This is the beginning of the cylinders and the small parts that we have. And this is where it all begins, right here. Over here we've got our CNC machines, and over here we've got Kevin. He's broaching the frames as they come from the casting. We get the castings in, the raw casting. He takes them, broaches the frame window, so we have an accurate size. Takes a little while, but it's accurate. The frames will go from there, and then they'll go onto these CNC machines to get milled out. Then over here we've got our CNC lathe over here. We got this piece not too long ago, and it's incredibly accurate. And this takes the rough cylinder blanks that we saw over at the Roby saws when they get cut off, and then it turns both ends and drills the center hole. They go from that machine to this blue machine right here, which is a CNC vertical miller, and this drills the holes, the chambers, and here we have some large frame guns that have just come off the CNC machines that are coming over to this area, which is the secondary operations. Some extra holes and some milling. Over here we've got the small parts department. These guys over here make all the small parts, from bolts to sights to hammers, triggers. These guys have a real critical job also. I mean, the whole place requires a team effort, and every person's contribution helps. Well, over here, nobody's here right now, but everyone went to lunch. Everybody's got to eat lunch, got to keep these guys going. So that's why there's nobody around here right now. But I'll tell you what, 12:30 comes around, they'll be back to working as hard as they were before lunch. Over here is the shroud department. Over here they take the all right. Over here is the shroud department. Over here they make all the secondary slots, the sight slots, the compensator slots, and these vented shrouds.
Fully on what's about to happen. 3, 2, 1.
We're now in the assembly room where the guns have just come back from the polishing room, and these guys here, this is where they fit all the internal parts, and each guy sticks with that gun until each guy sticks with each gun until it's fit to the perfection that we require. Then they go from here and they go into the range right over here, and they get test fired, and then they get put into the shipping room that we'll go to next.
3, 2, 1.
Here we got some of the used cases that we took out of from the test firing. They'll sit here, and then we'll get to count them up and box them and either reload them or sell them.
Now, friends, this is their test tunnel. They have an on-site test facility where they can actually shoot the guns. Of course, due to government regulation, it has to be behind this plexiglass screen here. And ladies and gentlemen, we're looking at the American Handgunner of the Year Award, Handgunner of the Year Award, presented to Dan Wesson posthumously. Of course, here eating his lunch is a pretty outstanding handgunner himself, Judge Scott. Okay.
We'll fill out whatever.
All right. Okay, well, we're getting still. Our base there is a little wobbly, so. Okay, we're getting still. Okay, good. All right, edit. 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, here we are in the Springfield Armory building here in Springfield, Massachusetts, with a lovely lady named Joanne Ganji. Did I say that right?
You did.
Well, Joanne, just walking around, this is a place of tremendous historical significance. And plus, right now you have the Royal Armorers exhibit from...
That's right.
Now, where are they?
London.
From London. And we'll be showing some things later on, but how long is that going to be here in the...
We are trying to confirm that right now, but as best we know, it will be here through October.
So several months
Several
from
months.
when we're doing this, yes.
That's right.
Well, tell me something, Joanne. Tell us what your museum here represents.
Okay, first off, it is a National Historic Site, part of the National Park Service, one of 368 sites across the United States. And as you say, the reason it's put aside is because of its historic significance to the nation, the development of the country. And its primary role, as you can figure out from walking around, was to manufacture military arms, shoulder arms, from 1794 to 1968.
Now, I see some national match, 1911, so
That's right.
also some handguns were built here.
And also to recognize that the Army was involved with the Olympics at the turn of the century. I don't know if you're aware of that.
No, I really didn't know that. No.
And 1994 is our bicentennial year. And we will be having a bicentennial here on our site that we will have reenactments set up outside. There will not be any firing or shooting, but we will have tents set up, and we will have the periods represented showing the arms that were made here at Springfield Armory and their use through time.
Well,
from the Revolution through the Persian Gulf. Yep.
Well, who set up Springfield Armory? Was there an arms factory here during our own Revolutionary War?
George Washington set up two national federal armories. One was here in Springfield in the north, and then we had one in Harpers Ferry, Virginia, which was destroyed in 1862 by Union troops during the Civil War, thus leaving us as the primary federal armory for the nation. And that happened because during the Revolutionary War, we had been very dependent on France and other countries for our arms. And so in 1793, President Washington made the decision that we should have a way of having our own arms made here in this country to safeguard our own
What all
and
was
make sure.
made here? Now, obviously,
The
you
very
made guns.
first one was
but then-
the smooth-bore flintlock, based on the Charleville model from France. And then the last being the M14 with the shoulder arms and the M60 machine gun. And there was an awful lot of research and development and other kinds of work going on here.
Was gunpowder made on this site?
No,
Was not.
you're thinking about, I think, before the Armory was operating as a national armory, it was a storage facility
Okay.
for several years where we had munitions stored near here in buildings that the government owned. And that was part of the reason they chose Springfield, because they already had an established site through the government.
Right. Of course, in those days, you would not want to put gunpowder around your manufacturing facility
Right.
because occasionally those magazines of powder did blow up. They
That's
might-
right, yeah. But our role was the manufacture of the shoulder arms.
From the beginning, do you have a reasonable guesstimate of how many firearms were made here over a cumulative total?
No, but I can give you just one figure in terms of the M1 semi-automatic rifle. Through contracts as well as what was manufactured here, 6.5 million M1s were made. That's just one firearm, so that gives you an idea. During the Civil War, we had about 3,400 people working here. During the Second World War, we had 14,000 people working here. And during the Civil War, they were manufacturing about 1,000 guns a day.
That is fantastic. And of course, during the Civil War period, you didn't have all these modern machines. That was that was handwork, wasn't it?
Right, and now in the building we're in now, remember, is the main arsenal. I don't know if you noticed the dioramas over here, but it shows you the layout. This was a very, very large site. We're only in one building of what was
The original
large complex.
Now, the Springfield Armory closed in 1968. Is that
that's right.
correct? All right. Now, friends, trust me on this one. Of course, we have a lot of people who watch our program, a lot of viewers in this area, in Massachusetts, in the Northeast. But if you're making a trip up near here, this is one of those stops that if you're a patriotic American, if you have any interest at all in firearms, this is one to come to.
Yes, and I also want to stress to people, too, that have families or friends who just think they're coming to a gun museum, that this is much more than a gun museum. You're also going to learn about technology, you're going to learn about the role of women, you'll learn about inventions and inventors that transformed industry in this country. We're talking about mass production, interchangeability of parts, Thomas Blanchard's eccentric lathe. Those are the stories behind what you're looking at in the cases that interest, let's say, other people too who may be with the member of the family who wants to come up and see the firearms.
Oh, I think that from this display, and of course they're always going to have, you're going to have some guest exhibit from some other source. And
Matter of fact, Smith and Wesson will be having an exhibit here later on in our bicentennial year. Our bicentennial goes through October, and in June we'll be setting up the Artistry in Arms exhibit that's been going nationwide.
We've had, those of you who've seen that on this program know what a terrific exhibit it is. And of course, it's going to be here when now?
It'll be coming in June.
Oh, in June. So,
Next month.
oh, look, that's reason enough to come. And of course, when you do come, this has got to be one of the prettiest places in the United States. The entire area here is so pretty. These people are very courteous. They're very nice, and they want you to come and see your heritage.
That's right.
And what days and hours are you open?
Well, actually, beginning on Memorial Day, we'll be open 7 days a week.
7 days a week.
Yeah, 10 to 5. There's no admission at this point, just by donation. And as of Labor Day, we will be closed on Mondays. So they have a good long time between now and then. We're open Tuesday through Sunday. So we're always open either 6 or 7 days, 10 to 5.
Well, Joanne, we really appreciate you letting us come in. We're going to take some pictures of several things. Friends, we just don't have enough, enough time to photograph all the fabulous things here, but we're going to give you some high spots and let you know some of the things here anyway. So just hold on just a minute, and we're going to start walking around the museum.
Well, Johnny, we're here at the Springfield Armory Museum, And here's a demonstration of the national match weapons that they have had something to do with, starting back with the old Krags and getting up to the 03A1, the very rare 1922 M1 22 caliber rifle, which has always carried a premium. As the M1 Duran, that George Patton referred to as the finest military weapon that had ever been devised. The M14, which was the last rifle that was in production here, and of course the pistol, the 1911 A1 National Match weapon. That's a very fine pistol and one that has won a lot of awards. It's probably the finest competition pistol that's ever been made. Well, you know, the Harper's Ferry was one of the government arsenals and production facilities. It was the one that John Brown raided and was overcome by forces under the command of Colonel Robert E. Lee. John Brown expected the slaves in the South to rise and support him, and he had control of an armory, and it didn't last very long. He was eventually hung.
Well, now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Harper's Ferry arsenal was destroyed by Union soldiers to keep it from falling in the hands of the South.
John, you got me on that one. I'm not sure. I know there was a lot of fighting in the Civil War of the federal armories here, and included in that, I believe, if I look carefully enough, I'll find the 03A1 and the 03A3. Weapons that were used in World War I, of course, back to the Duran, used in World War II, and the M14 that saw us beginning in the war in Vietnam, and of course it served in Korea, and then the war in Vietnam was partly fought with it and finally developed into the Colt M16, the military version of the AR-15.
Well, this is a Krag on the bottom, 3040 Krag.
That's correct.
There's all the, as we were talking earlier, I believe that just production of the M1 Duran was around, what, 6.5 million, just that one rifle?
A little over 6 million. That was, I think, primarily during World War II. I don't think it was produced after that. Here,
2, 1.
we have a demonstration here of the depth of penetration. And remember, this is a U.S. trapdoor rifle of 1873, 45-70 caliber. And we showed what its penetration was in a block of hardwood, which is not very great. It was 3.5 inches cross grain in seasoned oak. Then they went to the Krag Jorgensen 30-40 caliber at a distance of 25 feet, and in the same cross grain seasoned oak, it had a penetration of 19.5 inches. That's at a velocity of about just under 2,500 feet per second. Now we moved over to the more modern rifles, the M14 test record block, and it is surprising just exactly how much penetration that is. This is a block of seasoned oak, cross grain, and we find penetration, and here's the bullet here. That looks like it's about 27, 28 inches, 27.5 inches it says, cross grain and seasoned oak. And then down here we have the 03 30-06 rifle. It was used extensively in World War I. Of course, the Krag Jorgensen was too. And there they had a penetration of a little over 27 inches in seasoned oak cross grain. That's a lot of penetration. John, you're going to have to narrate this one.
A República de Colombia y ese tremendo tema. Tabaco y ron, qué rico, más música, buenas tardes.
Yeah. Good. I mean, of course, some of that can be us to see. We need to go, let's go over and do a piece on Ethan Allen, back over here, in wherever it is. Oh, no, Allen Hurston. Let's get this run here in the, read us what this is. That's the deck clearing gun. All 7 at one time. Hold up. In front of us, a flintlock volley gun. It has 7 barrels and apparently was all fired at one time. There were 655 of those guns produced, and it was produced for naval service. It was called a deck clearing gun, and I rather imagine it cleared a deck of a warship pretty fast. And then, of course, look at the double barrel flintlock pistol with the shoulder stock, the additional stock there. And that's a most impressive piece. Yes, and ATF wouldn't like that today either. Here's the exhibit on Erskine Allen, on the individual who invented the 1873 Springfield. This is one of his patent models. This is the wooden model he made up for patent. And there are several other things here on some of his carvings. And his original patent drawings for the 1873 Springfield trapdoor. All right, here we have an exhibit featuring John C. Duran, who was the inventor of the famed M1 rifle that was used in World War II so much. His firearms designing genius probably ranks close to Browning's. He had developed this rifle, and in 1927 the Army had decided to do something in connection with a smaller caliber, .276 caliber rifle. But in 1932, when he was Chief of Staff, Douglas MacArthur decided the Army ought to stay with a larger 30 caliber cartridge, and that was the forerunner of what happened and the production that was done in World War II. 6.5 million M1 Durans. Incidentally, a lot of those have been released to the civilian market. There are a lot more that the government has ridiculously destroyed. Well, since we're here, we have here the David Lytle, what they call the deck cannon. It was a life-saving device designed to shoot a projectile with some sort of rescue device on it from the deck of a gun, or deck of a ship, or even from shore. Rather formidable weapon. Looks like it has a bore of about 2 inches. And that rope, they could rescue sailors or even tow entire ships with lines that were sent out. I think this device is credited with saving about 4,500 lives over its period of use. Well, of course, Johnny, that's something that the present gun control addicts haven't given credit to the possession of weapons in the hands of the civilian population. They talk about how many deaths there are every year as a result of the use of guns, from only perhaps less than 1% of the guns that are in existence, and yet there are 2,400,000 crimes that are prevented each year because the potential victim was armed. Now, this is an example of the type of tools that were used in the manufacturing processes here at the Springfield Armory. Their principal source of power was water power, and
The water power, the water-turned wheels are paddles like the paddles on a steamship, and that in turn turn gears, and the gears in turn work these belts and power the machines. And this was all done through water power without any necessity of converting anything to either electricity or steam. Of course, this was before the time of electricity. It was developed by a Mexican general, and it was one of the first semi-automatic weapons that was used and adopted by any nation. It was devised in 1891, over 100 years ago. The Germans used it in their aircraft to begin in World War I, carried by their their aerial observers. They tried to use it some in the trench warfare, but it wouldn't stand up to use in the muddy trenches of France and Belgium.
You know, Joe, that's a good point. We've been saying that semi-automatic rifles have been around for, this is over 100 years.
That's why I said it, from 1891, that this is not exactly new technology, despite the fact that the present national administration seems to think that it's an advanced technological invention.
Hit 3, 2, 4. The reflection's killing. Okay. Hit 3, 2, 1.
Well, here we have a display of mishaps that have happened with rifles. You notice the one on the top has got an S-curve, a compound S-curve in it. That was a rifle that was being carried by a sentry on a rainy night, and a lightning bolt struck it, and that's what it did to it. Incidentally, it didn't hurt the sentry, strangely enough. Below that we have some other examples of damage, either from multiple loads in a rifle where it caused the end to explode, or muskrats chewing on rifle stocks, or down here some stocks, some barrels that were actually hit by bullets and pretty much put out of action. Carrying a good hacksaw along might have helped there. Well, here we have a display of a whole bunch of unissued musket rifles that were, I guess, left over at the end of the war between the states, and they're beautifully done and in perfect condition. I don't know how they've been preserved that well. I don't know how many of them there are in there. They are 3 deep on one side and 2 deep on the other. It looks like there must be several hundred at least.
Last time we was down at the store about years ago, that's the store is literally.
I got the slot back. Well, here we have a display of plains rifles, as they are called. This group of rifles were confiscated from Indians. Of course, the Indians were quick to realize that rifles were superior to bow and arrows, and they were quick to adopt rifles as soon as they could get their hands on them, either through purchase or trading or by picking them up from battlefields.
3, 2, 1.
This is a display that's very interesting because it illustrates the necessity of developing breech loaders, not only for the purpose of increased firepower, but for the danger to the man that was carrying it, because the standard issue weapon in the war between the states was a .58 caliber rifle musket. It was loaded by, not breech loading, what do you call it, Johnny?
A muzzle loader.
Muzzle loader, right, a muzzle loader. I'm not much on muzzle loaders. And at the Battle of Gettysburg, after the battle was over, it picked up 27,574 of these weapons from the battlefield, and some 6,000 were found to be properly loaded. 12,000 had anywhere from 3 to 10 loads in them, and one piece contained as many as 23 loads. That must have just about filled the whole barrel up. Now, the display says that from these figures, it estimated that a third of the fighting men on each side were carrying non-functioning weapons. It sounds to me more like about two-thirds of the people were carrying non-functioning weapons. That tallies, incidentally, with modern battle statistics, because the number of soldiers that carry weapons in the battle have been variously estimated at rather high percentages who never fire their weapons. Where are you getting a picture of me?
In the evolution of the percussion gun up through different types of repeating rifles, the Winchester, the M1 carbine, and the 1927 A1 Thompson. Now, friends, what we're seeing is a very old wheel lock here, and we have a display here showing the evolution of different types of handguns. And of course, it goes on through the flintlock and the percussion here. Then we have the Colt and Remington type percussion revolvers, and I believe that is Remington. Yes, it is. Then we have the Smith & Wesson type number 2, which is an under-breaking little revolver. And then it has the semi-automatic. This is a Luger type pistol with a snail drum magazine. And you know, friends, it's a 32-shot magazine, and this gun has been around since, oh my goodness, the early 1893. Of course, here is your Borchardt automatic, which dates from 1893, in fact. So the Luger, I think, is a little bit, it's a 1908 gun, but the semi-automatic handgun, that Borchardt automatic, has been around since 1893. And why in the world these knuckleheads want to take them away today is beyond me. Edit 3, 2, 1. And friends, we're looking here at a handgun exhibit. This is a Liberator pistol. It's in .45 caliber, and it's a little bigger as compared. Here's an experimental Colt, and here's our regular 1911 we're so familiar with. So this gives you an idea of the size of the Liberator. A single shot .45 ACP made of stampings, and our own government made about 1 million of these guns, and they dropped them by air. They gave them to people, literally the insurgents in World War II. And the idea was that the insurgent or the partisans would fight against the Japanese or the Nazi forces, and they would use their one bullet. Now, I talk about your Barney Fife gun, one bullet, and they would hopefully take some action on a sentry or on an individual trooper, and then get his weapon, because they only had one bullet.
It was the only guns having been made, Johnny, that took less time to make it than it did to load it and fire it.
Now then, friends, looking, we have a Kalashnikov, also some experimental guns. This was a needle-firing gun. Experimental guns here at Springfield Armory, and of course we wind up with the M16 or AR-15 series. Now then, friends, this rifle on the top is a double-barreled rifle. If I can get up there, you can see it. Instead of one barrel, there are in fact two, and it has two magazines. It was a multiple, what they called a salvo rifle, experimental. The next gun is an AR-10, and then, of course, the familiar AR-15/16, different development parts or units of those guns. And of course, these are different development examples of what wound up being types of M14s, a number of different experimental pieces here on display. Most interesting. Edit 3, 2, 1. Well, friends, here's another example of some of the final products made at the Springfield Armory here in Massachusetts. And as we said, it was deactivated in 1968. And of course, the commercial name went on to the Springfield Armory firm, which was a private concern, primarily selling Springfield handguns and M1A rifles, which are very similar to the M14. But this is a most impressive array here. You have the Browning 50 caliber machine gun, modifications, and finally down the bottom the M60, which has an interesting, colorful history behind it. Here's a display case, weapons from World War II, the Garand, M1 carbine, the BAR, a M3 grease gun, the 1911, and finally on the bottom the Johnson semi-automatic rifle, and a dented World War II helmet. I imagine the individual who wore this helmet had a fairly severe headache after that dent. 3, 2, 1.
We have a group of trench devices here. This was a unique application in World War I of trench warfare, and it was dangerous to stick your head above a trench. You probably got shot. So what they did, they stuck rifles above the trenches, and these rifles had quite a conglomeration of devices, including a periscope, so that you could remain down in the trench and yet fire the rifle at anybody approaching. And there are 3 different versions of these things. The most complex one looks like the one at the top, but we have other devices where soldiers could keep their bodies and their heads below level and still fire a weapon over the battlefield.
3, 2, 1.
Well, here's a display of a device known as a Peterson device. It was a device that was inserted into the receiver of a modified 1903 bolt-action rifle, and it gave the rifle the capability of firing 40 pistol-sized 30-caliber bullets in a semi-automatic mode. We've heard a lot about Peterson devices. It's the first one we've ever seen, and it's quite a nice display.
And of course what we have here is components of how to make a drawn cartridge case all the way across the board. Now, the case starts as a brass washer type thing, so a brass disc, and then it goes all the way across where it's drawn and pulled out into a full-size cartridge case. Now then, friends, we're looking at one of the very earliest firearms, and of course, essentially that wooden pole is the stock. This dates from the 1400s, from the 1300s, the late 14th century. And here was the portion that was the gun. It had a little touch hole here in the end that was struck with a match. You can see the hole there back on the end, and that was the gun. They put a ball or some rocks or whatever they had handy in that thing, one of the earliest guns. And of course what we have here is a couple of cased percussion Colts. And this is one of the most significant guns, one of the most important guns. I personally think it was a Walker Colt. This is, of course, an original. And believe it or not, the power of this black powder revolver was not generally eclipsed until the invention of the .357 Magnum in 1935. So this Walker Colt dates from 1847. And of course they are just nearly priceless today. Just a fabulous collection of guns here. A lot of other things besides guns, though, that anyone who likes historical things would enjoy this museum. Edit 3, 2, 1.
This is Mr. Dick Garand, John Garand's son. We're pleased to have visiting the museum today. He'll be here June 6th for a D-Day celebration where his dad is having the Garand Association dedicate a bust in honor of his father and his contribution to the nation with the M1 semi-automatic rifle.
Well, sir, it's very nice to meet you. We appreciate you taking time to speak with us. And some shots at Springfield Armory, the flag at half-mast because of Richard Nixon's death. And, of course, the gigantic old clock. A real pretty building here in Springfield, Massachusetts. Edit. My friends, I'll tell you what, this has got to be one of the prettiest places. When you see how pretty New England is, you can really understand why our forefathers were so convinced that they needed to protect and defend this country. This has got to be one of the prettiest countrysides, even today in 1994. The weather here is, and of course we're not talking wintertime, we're talking spring and early summer, but the weather here is wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Seth Wesson out here with one of his favorite guns.
Okay, Cal? You ready, Johnny?
Yeah.
We're gonna get them right there.
That was a good one.
All right.
Did you hear that echo?
No, not much.
Yo. That's good.
Kind of rolled over there, Johnny. What do you think?
Smile.
She kind of rolled right over,
I
didn't
believe
she?
so.
I think so. Something burning in the grass. Oh, boy.
And ladies and gentlemen, this is Eric Wesson. He's going to show us a little long-range shooting off his off the back porch, in fact. Now then, we've got a target out here. We can find it. It's darker than it appears to be here. Go.
Ready?
Yeah.
Yep.
Did you feel that heat?
You like that, Judd?
Outstanding.
Talk about a way to rid your farm of
Hey,
fire.
Johnny, take a look at the smoke up above. Go up in the sky.
Was that a nuclear or explosive target?
This here is a...
Well, it looks like we might have the fire department here after.
Hey, Eric, go put it out.
Johnny,
Now, let it burn.
You like that?
I'll tell you about the gun.
All right, hold up.
You probably dropped their kid and ran.
Pops, you gonna go put it
I
out?
did this with a Browning, A-bolt 270 Winchester, and it looks like it did the job. One shot, one kill. 150 grain spear, both tails fire point. That'll do it.
All right, intro. Bear with me, Bill. Get the sweat out of my glasses. Be hot off the press. Okay. Oh. Okay. Edit. 3, 2, 1. Whoops. Let's do a second edit. 3, 2, 1. Hello, I'm Johnny Rowland, your host of the Shootin' Show, and yes, it is summertime today. It's 95 degrees out here on the farm. Yeah, I had to move into my hat today, and I do have my cool down on, and you know that's a radiator for your neck there, and really serves to keep you a lot cooler on these very hot days. And yes, you can buy these through the Bullet Express, and I believe they're going for $9.95 each. So anyway, we've got a great show for you today, friends. We're going to have several features I think you're really going to enjoy. Let me remind you, go ahead and get a pencil and a piece of paper, because we're going to have some numbers that you're going to need to write down, I'm sure of that. So let's open today's program with a new gun from Wesson, and we're already getting orders for our Shootin' Show special, and friends, they're not going to be available. Edit, take 2. Hello, I'm Johnny Rowland, your host of the Shootin' Show, and welcome to today's program. We're so glad to have you. We have a great show for you. We have some features I think you're really going to find interesting. We're going to start today's program with this great Wesson fixed barrel 357 Magnum. This is a 5-inch gun, a very fine shooter, as I think we're about to see. Yes, it is hot. It's about 95 degrees out here on the farm. I did have to move into my hat. I have my cool downer on, and these are available through the Bullet Express. We're selling them, I believe they're going for $9.95 each. And these really help on a real hot day like today. It keeps you much cooler. If you're going to have to be outside working, well, these things are really a plus. We get these from the good folks, the same people that make RB17. This is really a lifesaver on these hot days. Well, let's get underway. Let's take our Wesson 357, check my hearing protection. And yes, it is in. You know, it's pretty easy. Most guns, be they semi-automatic or revolvers, whatever else, can do this. Check our water jug here. Okay, yes, that is core-bound ammunition. But let me tell you what, a lot of them won't do this. See our steel plates out here at 100 yards. Let's see what that looks like. Well, there's one. Let's shoot another one. Okay, here we go. Double check here, Brother Bill. Okay. Edit 3, 2, 1. Now, friends, we're looking at a very exciting handgun, certainly to me, and I'm sure it's going to be to a lot of you. This is the Wesson fixed barrel 357 Magnum. It has a 5-inch barrel, and also the Whalen grip. This is a grip option that they offer, and this has to be one of the nicest grip configurations that I've come across yet. It is so comfortable, yet it distributes the recoil of these guns, and I really don't understand why these Wesson guns do not have the same recoil sensation as, say, other 357 Magnum handguns. We've shot all kinds of 357s, but there's something about the engineering on these Wessons that these folks have done. They just don't seem to kick as hard. Now, this is a tremendous advantage for those of us who don't shoot a lot, and those of us who do shoot a good bit. Well, it really makes the gun much more comfortable to shoot with full power ammunition. As you can see, the finish is just out of this world on the Wesson guns, and I can't say enough good about these because they're such superior pieces. In my own personal opinion, the Wesson design is the single best revolver design when you take everything else into consideration. They're super accurate, as you saw at the intro of the show. It's easy to hit target. In fact, you can hunt deer with this gun with open sights at 100 yards if you're a fairly accomplished shot. And of course, you know me, Mr. Average here. I'm just your average shooter with a little bit of extra practice, so any one of you who are halfway decent shots could do at least as well as I can with one of these guns. They're just so easy to shoot. The action on double action is a little bit shorter than some of the other revolver brands, and the single actions are certainly just superior even from the factory. This is one gun that you can go out and shoot in competition. You don't have to have anything done to it. Just go get the gun and go shoot it, because they can win a silhouette match, or they can win an action shooting, action pistol or action revolver type match. It just depends. It gets back to the shooter, because these guns are really as good a technical piece as you're going to find. Certainly for the dollar value, these guns are running considerably less in retail price as their competitors, and I don't know how long the good folks at Wesson can keep their prices down, because really the guns are every bit the quality of the other large name revolver companies, are every bit and better, yet the prices at this time are a little bit lower. Like I said, I don't know how long they can keep them down there. but these guns are so much fun to go out and shoot. You know, it is more fun if you can take any sort of handgun, or any sort of gun for that matter, and go out and hit your target. And that's one of the things that these Wessons do make it easier to do. Well, let's shoot the gun and let you look at it. We've got the full charge carbine ammunition. Let me add, we bench rested this gun a little earlier, and we got it 5 shots at 25 yards in just about an inch. Now, friends, that is superior performance from any .357 Magnum revolver. Just excellent performance. So let's shoot the full power carbine. Let you take a look at it in my hands, and you just don't have the massive amount of recoil we might expect. Let's shoot it again. Now that's pretty amazing to me. Why this gun doesn't have more kick than it does. And out of this 5-inch barrel, you're getting full charge performance. That's one of the nice things about the 5-inch barrel. You can see this gun is almost no bigger at all than your Colt 45 ACP government model, which for what it is a really compact handgun. So what we're talking about here, you get a better sight radius, better bullet performance than say you get with a 4-inch barrel .357. And the .357s, to really perform well, it helps them to have the longer barrels, because you've got a lot of powder there that needs to burn. So I'm thinking the 5-inch gun on the .357 is really an awfully nice and often overlooked combination. But whatever this thing's doing, you're just not getting the amount of recoil that we would normally expect from a full charge .357. And we'll reload. Just let the camera run, because we're short of time, Brother Bill, as you know by now. All right. Edit. 3, 2, 1. Now, friends, we have our up close and personal target here. We also have our pro timer on, and let's do a little demonstration. We're going to shoot this gun along with the 45 ACP semi-automatic for 5 shots as fast as I can pull the trigger, and let's see how long it takes. I think this Wesson action lends to my speed a little bit. So let's go ahead. I'll get in position. I'll punch the start button on the timer, and it'll start me on the horn. And be sure that everything's in order. Yes, it is. Okay. It'll start me, and let's see how long it takes for 5 shots. Push the button. In position. Okay, 1.29 seconds, and realize, and we've got a couple of inch group there, which is not a bad group for full-powered .357 Magnum ammunition. Now then, the 45 ACP is typically faster to shoot because you're not dealing with quite as much power. Well, let's see what it does. 1.29 seconds. Let's compare the two of them today. Again, using full charge ammunition in both of them. Punch our timer. Okay, 1.16 seconds for our 45 ACP, and we got approximately the same size group. So we're only about just a little over 1/10 of a second away with our full-powered .357 Magnum. Now, friends, you do have quite a power advantage over the 45 ACP with a .357. The 45 ACP is certainly a great cartridge, but you do have a power advantage. Now then, if you're shooting at 25, 50, 75, 100 yards, that's where the .357 really comes into its own. And that's just not much time difference, friend, for roughly 550 or so foot-pounds of energy per shot versus about 350 to 400 or so pounds of energy with the 45 ACP. So you're putting quite a bit more power on your target in almost the same time. You're looking at just over 1/10 of a second difference for 5 shots with the revolver as with the semi-automatic. And those people that are saying that there's a huge advantage in the semi-automatics, they're just flatly wrong. Personally, I prefer, normally in most situations, a revolver over a semi-automatic. One, I don't have to pick up the hulls from all over the field out here. And two, I like the way the revolvers work. For those of you who are police officers, if you're still carrying a revolver and you're worried about firepower, you should be carrying a backup gun anyway. And you know, friends, the fastest reload's pulling your second gun. So, of course, these guns can be reloaded almost instantaneously with the various types of speed loaders that are out there. And we're out. Edit 3, 2, 1. Now, friends, you can see this Wesson, the high polish it has. These guns are second to no one in their finish and quality of fit. Now, you remember the Wesson has the latch up on the crane here. To take the cylinder out, you'll just push the latch down and push the cylinder out, like so. It's a very secure system, and latching here on the front of the crane does seem to give some accuracy benefit. Of course, we have the excellent adjustable sights that come on these guns, the trailing grip there that I'm really still trying to figure out why this gun doesn't recoil as much as some others. And to load the gun, we'll take our speed loader here, our HKS speed loader, put it in place and turn. And of course, we are loaded. Okay, let's take our look at our steel plates out here. Now then, of course, with a double action revolver, you have the option of cocking for single action fire. And watch that steel plate. Here we go. Yes, puts them down with authority. And we're shooting the full powered ammunition just so you can see the recoil just doesn't hurt that bad. Of course, it works the other way. You can cock with the trigger. Yes. Edit 3, 2, 1. Well, friends, if it sounds like I have really enjoyed shooting this Wesson revolver, well, that's only because I have. Like I said, it's more fun when you go out there and hit whatever you're shooting at. The Wesson fixed barrel 357 Magnum with a 5-inch barrel. Yeah.